Welcome to the Faculty Lounge, a podcast for and about the faculty at the University of Indianapolis. I'm Dr. Sarah Wareham, co-director of the Faculty Academy, and I regularly sit down with colleagues from across campus to talk about the realities and rewards of academic life. Together, we'll share honest conversations, practical insights, and maybe a few laughs along the way, all with the goal of making the most out of our faculty experience. So, grab a cup of coffee and join me in the lounge, where we celebrate the many ways faculty thrive in their roles. Pulling up a couple of chairs in the lounge today are Dr. Stephanie Wideman, Associate Professor and Chair of the Communications Department, and Dr. Colleen Wynn, Associate Professor and Chair of the Sociology Department. Thanks for hanging out with me for a bit today. To kick things off, why don't each of you share who you are, what you do here at UIndy, and one thing about your work that's really energizing you right now. Colleen, would you mind starting us off?
Sure, I'm happy to. So I'm Colleen Wynn, as you said. This is my 8th year here at UIndy, and my actually first year chairing. So that's been fun to kind of get to take on a new role and get to explore that a little bit. Within sociology, I'm an urban sociologist, and I study housing and neighborhoods and the people who live there. And the things that are energizing me right now are this year I'm working for the second time with Lacey Davidson and Anna Maria Ferraria on a program for exploring majors, so students who are coming in undecided in their very first year of college, and we're kind of teaching a few cohorted classes for them and helping them to figure out what they want to do and how they want to move forward in their college career, but also in their lives. And so that's been fun to kind of get to know those students and help them figure those things out.
Oh, well, what a good opportunity for our students who do come and they don't necessarily have a direction. You know, as a department chairs, you're used to working with students who already have, claimed their road in life, perhaps. That's really cool. I didn't realize that was happening on campus. Stephanie, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, yes. It's so good to be in these things and find out all the fabulous things people are doing. So I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication, and I'm the chair of the department. I got here in 2017. When I arrived in 2017, I was also here in the role of Director of Speech and Debate Team, or as I like to say, the award-winning UIndy Speech and Debate Team. I did that for a number of years, and I'm still on as the interim director right now. But, I couldn't help but thinking about how that experience, coaching and competitive speech and debate has impacted my own voice in the classroom.
Oh.
So my research, I'm a rhetorician, so we study how meanings change, persuasion, things like that. And a lot of my traditional research focuses on gender, power, politics. But recently, through special projects that have been funded, thankfully, by the President's Office with an innovation grant, I've been pivoting with my colleagues into non-traditional students and trying to understand their specific needs. Most notably, right now, we have this year the Student Veterans Initiative that my colleague Dr. Ray Begovich and I have been working on to build structures and support, along with the Office of the Registrar and many other offices here for those students.
Oh, well, cool. So it sounds like you both have ways in which you're working to support student groups that might have been underserved previously,
Yes.
Or you're trying some new ways to use your expertise to support student groups across campus.
Yes.
So cool. All right, well, I invited you here today to talk about your teaching voice and how you came to find that. So my background is I'm an educator by trade. So I started out as a K-12 educator, and so to find my teaching voice, I've had it for, established for about, 20, 25 years, right? So but when I came to the university, I realized that my teaching voice had to change, right? And so it was like, who am I speaking to? What knowledge are they coming to me with? What is their level of interest? What's really motivating for them? And then I had to try to pivot to figure out, how do I motivate and teach this other population? And so while I felt comfortable in the idea of teaching, it was how do I pivot and teach at the university level? And so I would just love to start out by asking you both, if you had to describe your teaching style in 1 or 2 words, what would you say?
I mean, I can start with this one because I saw some of these questions beforehand, and then I had a series of classes. In between one of them, I had a couple students in there early, and I asked them, it's like, what would you say? And so what they responded with, and I'm still trying to figure out what to make of it, is they said, you're animated. And I was like, animated how? Like, am I clear? Is it going well? And they're like, well, we can tell that you do the work to try to connect with us and meet us where we're at. And so if I take that back to what I would say is, I hope people would take from my teaching is, I hope I'm adaptable. I mean, you mentioned the importance of that as you transitioned into college teaching, but I've taught in now 5 or 6 different universities in my time going through graduate degrees, and in the South, and then I was in Detroit and New York, and then now here. And
cool.
Adaptation never stops. And that's, I think, what's really fueling a lot of my interest right now in non-traditional students, about meeting students where they're at and finding out what they need, letting their voices be heard in the classroom.
Okay.
That's so interesting that you're talking about, like, how do you meet students where you're at? Because I think that's what I was thinking about as well. And I think I would say maybe one of the words that might describe my teaching, I hope that students see it this way, would be empathy. So I did a few years ago some work with Allie Snyder in the School of Business here, and then Liz Ziff in my department on empathy in the classroom. And so I think that helped me to kind of give language to some of what I was already doing, right? Those being flexible for students where needed, right? Maybe offering them a little bit more time to turn something in, right? They've got something going on in their lives, but also being able to, challenge students where needed, right? Some students, I think, need us to push them a little bit, or to exhibit that flexibility, or to build in those kinds of things. So I think in a lot of my classes, I try to build that stuff in for them ahead of time so that it's just there, but then also approaching them and recognizing that they're people with things happening outside of the classroom, which I think really ties in to those non-traditional students that you're talking about.
They're whole people with whole worlds they bring into the classroom.
Absolutely.
That reminds me of something. So I work with people who want to become teachers, and so it's really important to me to be modeling things that I want them to be offering to their students. And so I talk to them a lot about how I want them to bring their whole selves into the classroom, and how I recognize that, and how that is actually like an asset to bring your entire person with you, and how we want to be doing that for our K-12 students as well, recognizing that they're bringing their whole selves in, and how do we honor that and create a space for their voice, just like the two of you are saying that you do in your college classrooms. But I know that you haven't gotten to where you are right now without some bumps in the road. So if you wouldn't mind, I wonder if there was ever a moment that you felt like your teaching voice wasn't working, or you hadn't quite found it yet. And, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. I think I, like Stephanie, taught at many different places, different regions of the country. So I started teaching as a master's student, actually, in Kentucky, and then I went to my PhD in upstate New York, right? And then I came here for my job. And so being in those different spaces and having really different students is a challenge, I think, particularly maybe in a field like sociology. I think it's a challenge for everyone, right? But I think because of the kinds of topics that we talk about, right, sometimes students are more resistant to talking about those, or more open to talking about them. So I can remember in my very first semester here at UND, teaching our research methods class, and we were talking about the Tuskegee syphilis study, which is a common example of unethical research, right? And so I was asking the students in groups to kind of answer some questions, and I was getting their responses back from them. And one of the questions was asking about the role that racism might have played in what happened as part of that study, which is, again, very well documented, right? And it was just really silence in the classroom. There was one group that happened to be predominantly students of color, and so they were engaging with me a little bit more, but I was saying, let's hear from another group, and then no one was really answering, and I had come from teaching in upstate New York, where we had a lot of students from New York City who had like really personal experiences with things, or who had, in some cases, learned about this in their high schools, and so brought in that knowledge. And I was like, okay, are we maybe feeling uncomfortable because of the topic, right? And kind of trying to pivot. And so I had to think about in the future, like, how will I bring that up? Because I think it's very important that we talk about it. In fact, it's more important to talk about it when students are uncomfortable. But how do I set it up so that they feel like it's safe to talk about those things?
Right,
Even in a, and these were students who it's a 300 level class. So it's not like they were brand new to college or anything like that. But I think they just felt like, am I going to say something wrong, or am I going to, right?
There
and so
very much is that, like, Midwestern nice.
Yes.
I'm here from
Yes.
Indiana. Like, if I don't feel like I've had that lived experience, then can I speak to
Yes.
it? And am I going to say something wrong?
Well, I heard something about that in Faculty Academy when I first came here, which was a lovely experience, especially as we're sitting right in Faculty Academy spaces here. But, I'd already gotten here, already moved, already signed the contract. And in Faculty Academy, they were telling me, you need to understand what Midwest nice is. And when they articulated their version of what the students are, I started to get a little nervous because they're not used to somebody being blunt or direct with them. They are interested in the Midwest and culture and getting new experiences, but maybe haven't had a lot of them in the past. And I was just thinking, I've just come by way of New York and Detroit. I'm not sure if how well I'm going to be able to take Midwest nice. Yeah. I hope my student, at that moment I was like, you've already signed the contract, you better figure this out. But it's worked. I mean, there was a lot of truth to what they were saying in that. And, that's where adaptability comes up for me. I mean, I remember, if I thought back about originally finding my voice, I remember viscerally, physically, the first time I taught a class. Okay. So I was 22. I was in the South at the time. I just graduated, done a year in master's, and then was starting to teach public speaking. And I had been a graduate assistant for the speech and debate team. I had competed competitively in speech and debate, and I had this wonderful mentor who believed in me, and he's like, you're going to go do this. And I know you don't think you're ready for this, but you're going to just do it. And that's going to happen. Yes. So I remember pacing around the table, pacing. And the big question I just kept going through my head is this imposter syndrome that I think so many people and faculty face over and over again of like, well, who am I to be in front of the class?
Yes.
And so he saw me pacing, kind of guessed where I was at, and, said, who you are is the person who's going to work the hardest, help the most, and smile the most.
Oh,
those basic things help me get the inner resources to walk to the front of the class. And so I didn't come in as, all right, I'm running this, so y'all sit tight and I'll let you know how I'm going to do this, okay? Of all of my 22 years,
right.
No graduate degrees at that time. Instead it was, you're going to see me every day as I'm here for you to help you. And then eventually it came in. It was the greatest thing, and I know my lecture was not that great that first day. But they clapped at the end. Yes, because they saw how hard I was trying.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I was so physical. I was like running around, animated, like, look at this communication model, da-da-da. They were like, bless her heart. Bless her heart. She tried so hard. So that was the beginning of my journey.
It is such a challenge, right? I also started teaching as a second-year master's student, and it is such a weird thing to be in front of the classrooms where you were just sitting, right? And like while you're still a student in that way. I think when we're teaching as PhD students, it's also weird, but I think it was particularly weird because, I similarly, right, had come straight through undergrad, and I can remember being like, and in my case, I was literally doing my master's at the place I'd done my undergrad, and so it was literally the classrooms where I'd been sitting, just a couple of years before, and we had a lot of non-traditional students. It was a regional state school, and so we had students that were older than me in the classroom, and and how was I going to navigate that? And so it definitely is a challenge to kind of step into those roles very initially. And I think you're right that even if you're not 22, right, when you're starting, that imposter syndrome of being in the front of the room can be a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I remember having a lot of that, just thinking like, oh, well, I've taught kids. Like, what am I doing here? And it's a little different because I had done a lot of like professional, development and some administrative work with teachers. So, into that like professional role. But yes, no, I remember having it when I felt very comfortable working with teachers who were practicing, but I didn't have the tools in my toolbox to work with undergrads. And so then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, the things that I'm trying to use now with my undergrads would work with the teachers who are out in the classroom, but how do I pivot and how do I figure out kind of what is my teaching voice for undergraduate students? Because I realized that they needed so much more like emotion from me and like a lot of caring and a lot of vulnerability, which I will say that when I first got into higher ed, I was very scared of vulnerability with my students because I felt like I needed to be on my game. I needed to know what I was doing. And because I was, I've been here this is my 7th year. So I'll say mid-30s is about when I came. And so I had already felt, I'd had a career, right? And I had, felt very comfortable in that. But then to come over here on this other side and realize, like, oh, shoot, I don't know how, I feel like I don't know how to work with this population who needs more from me than maybe what I was willing to give at first.
Right, because you're more of an authoritarian when you're K through 12. There's all these laws and rules that structure.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
When I hear, like, from you that concept of vulnerability, I mean, that's, for me, makes me think of how much you self-disclose. Because we've all been in those classrooms where the level of self-disclosure starts to take over the class. And so it becomes more of a performance rather than instruction. And I know sometimes, thinking in my classes over the past couple of years, when I feel the most secure in my subject matter, I may be more apt or open to self-disclose.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Sure.
And I mean, we all have the classes that we've taught for 20 years, 15 years, right? And then we take on a new one and maybe that gives a little bit of vulnerability in there that makes it more difficult to relate in that moment. For me, it really comes back to this idea of just like allowing us, when we're finding our voice, to think of it as a continual process. That we find it, then we refine it, we adapt, and letting ourselves have that moment of, you're an expert in this, but at the same time, it's a whole new ball game as you take on new challenges.
Yeah, it is so fun, right, to get to take on those new challenges. And I think as I've, done more of that and moved through my career, like to tell the students more about that, right? I think when I first started, if I didn't know what I was doing, I was like, okay, I don't want them to. I can remember my very first semester here, I was teaching this global families class that actually Amanda had kind of designed and taught, and then there'd been a person in between us that had taught it, and it was a writing and speaking class, and so it had this like very complicated, it's actually not complicated, but it felt complicated to me, right? Scaffolded kind of paper assignment. And I can remember students asking me questions and giving like the most vague answers, right? Because I was like, I don't actually fully understand this assignment yet. It's like day 2 of class or something, and I was like, well, we'll talk more about that, right? And kind of trying
to
sort
of self-protection or communication coming in that moment.
Absolutely. Right. It was my first semester in a tenure track job. I just finished my PhD in June. And so I was, in a brand new place and feeling anxious. And you're starting to already think about, right, promotion and tenure. And like, will these people like me? Will I be successful here? And now it's so different, 8 years in, where I'm so much more transparent with them about things, even in a new class. Right. And now I'm like sort of getting excited to teach some of these new classes or take on those new challenges and saying to them, hey, this is my first time teaching this. And so can you tell me if it isn't going well?
Yes.
Or like, I've taught this before, but I've changed this assignment. And so talk to me about how it's working for you. And then being able to sort of call that audible and change it if it's not going well. And I think that is something that really comes with time. And space. And so I think it's, it would have, I think, been so helpful to me to hear more people say that, right? I think I had great people in my department who were telling me those kinds of things, but of course I wasn't like, hey, I don't totally understand what I'm doing here.
Right.
Yeah. Right. You don't want to say it in that moment.
Yeah, because you're like, I don't want them to think I'm not qualified. And right. And so I can remember reading through the like long assignment guidelines. And then right after that semester, I was like, okay, I know how to change this. I know how to make this work for me, right? But it's I think it's the same thing as when we're handed someone else's class to take
Exactly.
over.
I was going to say that. That's a real dangerous thing to do. And I mean, I'd done it for years, like public speaking and stuff I knew was more in my wheelhouse. But one of my first or second years when I was here, my epic fail, I guess, we would say, I was given, I was, okay, it's my first semester and I think I'll take their syllabus. They've been really successful before.
Yeah.
And this was a very professional landscape type of way of looking at small group communication. My wheelhouse is more in theory and application from that, and it just evolved. I mean, at one point, oh, I'm so glad I'm tenured. I will say, I said, well, small group communication isn't a field, so. And they were just like, but the class is small group. I was like, we picked it back up. We got through the rest of the semester, and then after it, I had the best semester teaching that class because I was able to put it back in a wheelhouse that made sense to me.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there are two things that I just want to note about what you've both just said. Is the title of this episode is called "Finding Your Teaching Voice," and I think about it being an evolution, but did I allow myself an evolution? I mean, that really just stood out to me when I felt like I needed to know everything and just be totally just have it all wrapped up my first year, and to think that giving ourselves and showing ourselves the grace to say it is an evolution to find your teaching voice, and just because you have what you're comfortable with now, in a few years you might evolve into seeing yourself in your role as teacher and instructor and mentor differently, so you might show up differently for your students. And then I also heard you both talk about inviting your students' voice into the classroom. So it's not only finding your teaching voice, it's allowing your students to be showing up and sharing their voice in the classroom, which is really cool. Anything else you guys want to say about that?
Well,
Sorry. I felt like I cut you off there.
No, I love the word of evolution. I mean, you're continually evolving, right? It helped me in my undergrad with that mentor that I had, not undergrad, my master's degree, and then also my PhD. I found this text from a communication pedagogy class I took, and it's called Kenneth Ebel's The Craft of Teaching.
Okay.
And that text has stayed with me as a lens for continual reflection. I mean, it says the craft of teaching because it's an art form. It's something you practice and something that gets better, and sometimes it just falls apart. I mean, he has a whole chapter what to do when the class is not working. And to some degree, he goes, well, let it not work for a minute and take a break. So finding a text or finding, we're all academics, finding some way that you can framework for self-reflection has been really important in my life, and I think would be the advice I would give for any people who are stepping into this role.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can remember when we started teaching in my master's, our grad director at the time had a meeting with the 4 or 5 of us that were about to start teaching, and he said, when you're teaching, and you have a great day in the classroom, nothing feels better, right? It's an amazing feeling.
Yes.
I think he said something it's the best high or something, which is hilarious because he's Mormon. And so has never even had so much as, he's never even had so much as a sip of coffee, right?
Right.
But then he said, but on the flip side, right? When something doesn't go well, you will feel like you failed in a way you maybe never have felt before. And that it will feel like such a challenge, but it's not, right? It's not a reflection on you as a person or as an instructor or as a sociologist, right? It just didn't work, and then you got to figure out what can you do from there. And so I think I often have that in the back of my mind as well, and it's something I've passed on to students as advice, right, about teaching, but also about some of those other kinds of things. And so I think having those voices of mentors is so important as well. When I started teaching, I would often think about specific faculty that I had and how could I create a classroom that looked like those classrooms where I loved to learn. Or how did they approach specific topics or activities or, right? And then how could I mimic that? And then sometimes it didn't feel authentic to me, right? I would try it and I would be like, oh, no, I don't like that. Right? That wasn't for me. And so then I'd have to think about could I modify this? Could I use someone else's as an example? And so I think those all become part of us and part of our teaching story and who we are. And perhaps our students are carrying things forward that we maybe don't even know about, into maybe not into professional teaching in our cases. In your case, yes, probably. But maybe in mine and Stephanie's cases, not all of our students go on to teach, but maybe they're carrying that in the teaching that they do in other ways, right? In their workplaces and in their lives and things like that.
Yeah. Well, no, I really appreciate that, because it is the idea of like building on people who have come before, right? And it's like we're not the first to have these experiences, but we can learn from the people who we've seen working through these experiences for themselves, and what kinds of things do we see in others that we would love to emulate in our own teaching.
Yeah, I mean, the reflection is so important. And you just got me thinking, you two, now both of us are chairs, and this is my third year as chair, and you just stepped into that role. It's kind of the same thing. I feel like I used that same advice that my mentor gave me about who am I to step up. The chair is kind of a weird role to have. You're like prominent among equals. Right. And I think I did that same thing of I'm going to go in in a servant role of I'm going to smile the most. They're all going to know I'm there to support them. It's going to be continually a reflection on my role and how I can help them in the department.
Yes. For those of you who are listening, the lights just turned off in the room, and we're all like waving our arms around trying to get the lights to turn back on. Oh, man. Well, I think that you have, given us some tips and things that you would offer future faculty or faculty who are currently teaching and, looking to find their teaching voice. Is there any one practical tip? So when you guys talk about reflection, that reminds me of what Amanda Miller would always say to new faculty in new faculty orientation. And that is, at some point throughout the semester, give yourself just a few minutes to start writing down reflections about what's going well, what's not going well within your class, and so that you can remember for the next time you teach it. So I really appreciate that, because, as a K-12 educator, you're constantly reflecting and trying new things and everything. So that was kind of already part of what I was doing, but I had some colleagues who were new to teaching itself, and that they really found that to be a very valuable exercise in being able to say, okay, these are all the things that I wrote down during this semester about what was going well, what didn't, and then as I look to teach this course again, what do I want to take into the future? So that's like the tip that I feel like I can offer, because Amanda gave that tip to us. Is there anything that you would think that you could provide faculty who are trying to find their teaching voice?
Well, I would like to be this person that puts out, and this is what I've been talking about in the department as well. The martyrdom complex that we tend to have in academia,
Yes,
we've got to adjust that. Just as much as we cherish and invite our students to come in as whole people into the classroom, we need to recognize and let ourselves bring our whole self into the classroom. I see too much with new professors, but also people who've been doing it for a while, that they will just go and make the assignments the most complicated, the grading the most complicated. It's almost a badge of honor that they were up from till 3 a.m. grading this, and then got 4 hours of sleep. And I think it's really important that we all think of ourselves, like what does the student really need? Well, they need a professor that's healthy, that is rested, right? That is happy. And so that work-life balance is not just a treat we give ourselves, it's something that's essential for the classroom and for teaching. So look back, I know it's easier said than done, but I'm trying to have myself do it. When you create your assignments, and you're also creating your workload, and look at how much value and impact is each of these assignments giving to the student in the form that it's at. So summing up, bring our students in as whole people, but we are also whole people, and martyrdom does not equal good education.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree completely, right? I think that work-life balance is so key, and I think that we have really gotten away from that maybe as a higher ed, an institution kind of, right, that we are, right, and I often think about, and we talk about sometimes, like, right, these jobs were created for people who had, right, like for men who had wives at home to take care of all of their, right, like maybe not specifically at this institution, right, but like the job of professor, right, has that, like where somebody else was taking care of your life stuff outside of there. But also we know that in many cases, right, those women were also helping to like edit books or, right. Transcribe interviews or those kind of things, that sort of unseen labor. But most of us don't have someone who, right, even people who are married or have partners, right, those people often are busy doing their own lives and their own work, right? Our society is not really set up in such a way that most people have someone at home to handle all of that kind of stuff for them. And so I think you're so right, that we need to maybe start thinking about how can we adjust these jobs and these careers, because we can't show up for our students and for each other in a way if we're not taking care of ourselves too. And so I think I like to sort of maybe give some concrete examples of that for people. I like to kind of, when I've made out my assignments, I write down all the dates and I'm like, is this going to be a terrible week where I'm just grading like 15 things?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
And so and then I figure out, can I move these around, or do I need this assignment in this class? Is this maybe too many things? And that's not to say that I get it right all the time. I made some changes to a class this semester and I have done some bad things there. I created, I think, too much. It feels too hectic for me, and I think it feels too hectic for them. And so I want to pull some of that back in the future, right? I think I thought that these assignments were going to go a little bit better, be a little bit easier, but it feels a little bit like a hamster wheel that I think I'm running on and they're running on. And so, I need to revise that in the future and maybe think about, can I streamline some of those things? And so I think really thinking about, what, like, we create our schedules, as you said, right? Like our grading, like so I often am like, oh, past Colleen, she sabotaged me by, like agreeing to something or that I maybe and didn't want to do. And so I think trying to really think about what's it going to feel like and what are my other commitments that I've already agreed to, right? And I think that's something that I'm really discovering as a chair now, right? Like I was a grad director before this, and so that was busy, but not in the way that being a chair is. Okay. And so I think it's leading me to rethink my own setups, but also to try to model that for folks in my department and to try to help them figure out what can we pull off of their to-do lists and off of their plates, so to speak, there, and how can we create that? And I think I, like probably many of us, right, are better at doing that for other people than I am for myself.
That's a great point.
And so trying to figure out, how do I do it for myself too? But I love that you mentioned Amanda's tip about that reflection. I keep like a class map sort of course calendar where I write notes. Each day has a section. I don't have to write them every day, but I can just sort of make a note of like, this didn't go well or they didn't like this. And then for bigger stuff, I just put it in bullet points at the bottom of that document. Okay. And it's just in my folder. I used to print them and handwrite on there, but I could never find them, or I'd be like, oh, that's at work, and now I'm prepping at home for the summer, and so I have to go in and get that. And so I just started doing them in my drive where I have that. And so I just have the sort of class map, and it's their like course calendar. And then it just has like a column of here's what I need to get ready or bring or do every day. And then here's my notes. And so I just add any notes there, or I can just comment them in Google Drive. And then I put the bullets at the bottom of like, change this whole, like this assignment isn't working, or try this, or it's working okay, but people are using AI to answer these reading questions. So think about that, or those kind of things. And so that's been really helpful for me to be able to pull those up there. And so to kind of build on some of that reflective component there.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, we are to our lightning round segment. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me to have this conversation. And now I get to put you each in the hot seat, and I'm going to ask you a few questions, and it'll just be like bam, bam, bam. So I'll start with Stephanie.
Okay.
All right. So Stephanie, what is your favorite campus spot?
It annoys some people in my department, but my favorite spot outside of my office is sitting when you get off the elevator on the third floor of Ash, We have our media screen there. It's kind of the nexus of the department, so I just get to sit out there and watch people come by.
Oh, okay.
Although I do get looks from students and faculty like, what is she up to? Why are you? Go back to your office. But I love being there. The energy there is really refreshing.
Yeah. Oh, cool. All right, I'll have to visit you up there.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite spot near campus?
Does that mean near campus?
Near campus.
Okay. Near campus, I would say Garfield Park.
Yep.
There's a lot of history in Garfield Park. Beauty. I love the fact it's the oldest neighborhood, I think, in Indianapolis.
Okay.
Close to it, something along those lines. And I've had a lot of good times walking my dog and relaxing there.
Oh, nice. Okay. What is one thing you have to have when you work, no matter where you are? Can't say laptop.
I know. No matter where. Oh, I know. I am a weirdo about my pens. I
Yes.
love pens, and I like a fine 0.5 or less. I've been using the Precise V5s, which are nice.
Okay.
But recently, I have figured out that the Japanese are efficient in so many things, especially their pens.
Pens, yes.
You can get, like, their version of Bic is high quality here. So I recommend any Japanese writing products. And I cannot write with anything else.
Oh, I love it. I'm crazy for pens as well. What are you thinking about at this point in the year regarding making the most of faculty life?
There was a challenge put forth from our dean, Travis Miller. It's lovely, to go to somebody else's event. And I'm trying to do that. I went to a volleyball game this past weekend. I know I'm going to try to hit up a lacrosse game. And then I've been looking at the English department is putting some really fascinating events up, possibly music, just getting myself out of something that I've planned and just going enjoying the fruits of other people's labor.
Ooh, that's fun. That's fun. Yeah, that's one thing I don't do very much is go to campus events. I see them come through and I think, oh, that would be fun. But I don't get myself there. So, all right. Well, Colleen, you're up next. Okay, so what is your favorite campus spot?
I think probably our sociology department office suite.
Okay.
It's where I spend the most time. I don't know if it's maybe my favorite, but it is where I spend the most time. But I like, we have great colleagues in there, and our students will drop by sometimes and chat with us, and we can kind of sit the way our offices are situated. We can sit in our chairs by our doors and chat a little bit. And I think in terms of spaces outside of that, I do also like to sometimes go and sit on like the steps of Good Hall when it's nice outside.
Nice.
And so that's kind of a nice spot. And it's often, there's sometimes a few other people there, right? But it's a good place to pop outside for a meeting with somebody or something like that if the weather is nice.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, what's your favorite spot near campus?
Yeah, I think there's some great coffee shops not too far away. So none really within walking distance unless I'm forgetting any place, right? But there are, in Garfield Park, there's a couple of new spots there, and so and I too love Garfield Park, but I always love like up in Fountain Square, Calvin Fletcher's coffee shop is a great one, and over in Beech Grove there's Silver Linings, right, and so there's some other ones nearby as well, and so I think being able to get out and go to some of those coffee shops, I don't always have the time during the day like in the year. But in the summer, especially, I've been trying to go with some faculty colleagues to do like work sessions that are a combo of hanging out and working.
Yes.
There, and it's been great because we've gotten to visit so many different areas of the city to try out different coffee shops and things like that, and places that I don't normally go in my kind of day-to-day time, and so it's fun to get to see other neighborhoods and other parts of the city, and so I highly recommend to people, right, to get some faculty friends together and do some of that meeting up with people, especially in the summer, where maybe you have a little more flexibility, but I would love to get my schedule to a place where I could do it during the year, too.
Yeah, I always try to, do both, a little bit of work and a little bit of socializing every time, because time is so limited that if I can get both out of my time, then that's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what is one thing you have to have with you when you work, no matter where you are?
I too like a good pen, but I would say my thing that I mostly need is I need to have at least some water, like something to drink, right? Because I think sometimes that can help me, like that pause of like, it gives you that little moment of reflection, or right, if you're getting kind of like sleepy or something, right? That cold water can like jolt you back and you're like, okay, yes, I'm back in it. Right. And so I think I almost always have like a cup of water or my water bottle or something with me.
Yeah. Okay, and then what are you thinking about at this point in the year regarding making the most of faculty life?
Yeah, I think I'm looking for more chances to connect with other faculty and get to see the people that I don't normally see. So some of that is through going to some of those events like Stephanie mentioned, right? And there's so many amazing events. So I would definitely encourage you, Sarah, to try to find a couple to add. But also just trying to get those connections with people, right? Finding a few minutes in the day to chat with people or setting up something, right? So looking ahead on your calendar and seeing, okay, can I go for 2 hours on a Friday morning and work at a coffee shop nearby with somebody, or can I do this or that, right? And I think those connections are what help to sustain us. And so it's so important.
Yes.
And they give you that chance to kind of talk things through or reflect on things. And I think those faculty friendships are so key for me.
Well, and I would imagine, it goes without saying, but if someone is to see you on campus and they are like, oh, hey, I just listened to that podcast episode, and, give you a wave or say hi, right? Both of you are very friendly, very open to meeting new people and supporting colleagues across campus.
Yeah, and it sounds like you can find us both in our office areas a lot.
Right.
Third floor of us.
Right.
Second floor of Good Hall.
There we go.
Well, I want to thank you so much for inviting us on. When we started talking about this podcast, this idea of finding your voice, I mean, it is conversations like this, where it's even refined the way that I'm thinking about it. I came in here thinking of this as like, well, how did I find my voice? And now I think I'm leaving going, how do I keep finding my voice?
And how do you use it?
Yeah,
right?
and how do I use it? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it really got me thinking a lot about how do you use your voice outside of the classroom too. So that's something that I think, which we didn't have time to talk about, right? But I think it's something that has also kind of changed for me, and the longer I've been in teaching and as a faculty member, and right, how do you, like, our expertise is in our fields and in teaching, but we're asked to make so many other kinds of decisions as well. And so how do we use our voices to advocate for the things, right, that we believe in or that our fields believe in? How do we create a better work-life balance on campus for folks? How do we, and for ourselves, and how do we support those incoming people? And so I think, I've started thinking about over time, like, how do I use my service as a faculty member, right, to reflect the things that I'm teaching my students about, or that I believe? And so how do I create those spaces in other places? And so it was kind of neat to get to think about how those things might fit together as well. And so I would encourage people to also think about, how do you use your voice outside of the classroom settings? And I think we're lucky to be at a place where we're really able to do that, right? We have people who are pretty receptive to having those conversations with us and exploring ways that they can create supportive environments as well. And, I think that's important for us to also think about and remember.
Absolutely. So we're all at different points in our teaching journeys, but at the same time, we have a lot of things in common that we can relate to one another. Well, we've come to the end of today's conversation in the Faculty Lounge. Thanks to Stephanie and Colleen for sharing their perspectives, and thanks to you for being a part of our little community here. Just like walking out of the lounge after a good talk, I hope you leave with something to think about and a smile to carry into the rest of your day. Until next time.